Hello, my fellow slouch potatoes. I am joining you here as I slouch as well. I am slouching in my chair. Looks like the joke is on me now. All right, I'm going to sit up a little bit better, a little more straighter. Let me just straighten out my insides and create a little bit more space in there. That feels better. Yes, not as slouchy. Hey, I hear you, It's the end of the day. You want to just curl up and get yourself all flopped out on a piece of furniture. And I know that when I do a little bit more to just kind of keep myself upright and not sit as much, that feels better. What do they say? Sitting is the new smoking? Well, I guess I'm going through a few packs a day then. I notice even when I'm sleeping sometimes that I'll just be like clutching a pillow, and why am I not just relaxing when I sleep? Shouldn't we just all be relaxing? Oh boy, just to relax when you're sleeping. You'd think when you're sleeping, that's what I always thought when I was little. You see it in the cartoons, you see it in TV, it looks so peaceful. Everybody's just nice and quiet, and then you just kind of wake up after, 8 hours of good sleep, and you're refreshed. What happened to that? Maybe some of you out there that happens. I feel like I wake up sometimes, a couple times a night, maybe at least like at the 3 to 5 a.m. time zone. That seems around when people tell me they're all waking up. That early morning part of the day, that chunk of the day, just get rid of that chunk of the day. Just turn everything off for that part of the day. Where's the kill switch on everything? Just take it all off. Let people sleep at least those moments when everyone's waking up. Well, I didn't think I'd be speaking this much in the intro about posturing and sleep habits, but it seems kind of fitting for my guest today, Josh Whiteley, who is going to be here talking about acupuncture and Ayurveda, and we'll be talking about living a balanced life while also dipping into some of his past in the punk rock scene in the up in Vegas. So we're going to get into that. And as the title is so aptly named, which is, I don't get to I don't always come up with the title for the shows, but Vegas and the Vedas, I really like that. I think it's pretty catchy, and it's very suiting for what we're going into. I am happy to have Josh here. He's a Tucson friend I met out here, and really great guy, super sweet, very gentle soul. He has a wonderful acupuncture clinic in town, and he has a lot of great stuff that he offers, offerings online you can do with him, and I'll link to all those in the show notes. All right, so as I do a little yakety yak here, we're going to hear some talk back. Ladies and gentlemen, here we go.
Till the very end, thank you for the fun and the play. Until next time, I hope you all do fine. Live to see another day. My pals and my peers, throughout all the years, you've done so much.
We'll see where the wind shall take us today, Josh.
Yes, we will.
We're going to go ride the wind, on the winds of change. The winds of change.
The times they are changing.
The times they are changing, blowing in the wind. Wind. The
wind beneath my wings.
Yeah, all the wind. And the reason we're saying all this is because it's windy out. It's the spring wind. It's the wind of spring that comes through Tucson, and it just blows it all apart.
Something like that, huh?
Something like that. Yeah, it's a lot of, the wind. The wind here is like, for people that haven't experienced like desert wind, because back east it was windy, but here it's this kind of like goes through you. Back there, it just gets sucked into the plant life, but here it just kind of like rolls from far away. You feel it from far away, and
Right.
it comes in and gets you, makes you crazy.
And getcha.
And so here we are. We're doing it in the wind, but on a nice enclosed kind of porch area, you know, the bricks holding the wind at bay. We could just talk about the wind. I feel like a weatherman right now. A weather vane. I was actually wanting to get a weather vane the other day. So I'm
What
already
is a
going
weather-
off on a tangent before I let you even speak. Yeah, I was thinking how cool it would be to have a weather vane up top and just be like, oh, that's neat. You know?
What is a weather vane? Is that the little tube
Yeah.
thing or the windsock kind of looking thing?
No, but we need
No.
a wind sock as well. Wind sock would be
We do
good.
need one of those.
So put that on the list of things to pick up at the store.
Here's your list.
A weather vane is those things at the top of the houses. Like, I don't think people are using them anymore, but it's usually maybe like a rooster or something, and it point the direction.
Oh, right, right.
Oh, the
right.
wind's blowing northeast or something like that, and you know, then they could tell, okay, that's where the rooster's
Right.
pointing,
Right.
or some animal or something like that, creature. I'd probably get like a Bigfoot weather vane if I
Right.
could.
Right.
And yeah, so anyway, the windy winds, but we're here. I'm excited. We're having some nice tea right now. It's good. Cheers.
Cheers.
It's always nice to. Sound effects.
Nervine tonic.
Nerve tea. It's like we can do little plugs, you know, because not sponsored or anything, so we can just, you know, do a plug for Nerve Tea for the Tucson Herb Store.
It's delicious.
It's so good. Takes the edge off of life, I say. Just takes a little, just softens things a little bit more. And we're just like, we were kind of joking beforehand how we were gonna, you know, like do a bunch of drugs during the show and make it an epic show, and then take acid at the very end and say we'll return and we'll be back and give you an update, and then we'd go streaking into another dimension,
Into
as you
the-
said.
yeah. Yep.
Streaking into the fourth dimension.
Right. Only the fourth.
Yeah, I'm not ready to go to.
Don't want to go any
fifth.
further than that
No.
yet.
Not ready for.
We
that.
have some boundaries.
Yes.
We have some sense
Yeah, we do. We have to pace ourselves.
to be practical.
Yeah, I can. It's the third dimension is enough. Is for me. So trying to get to the fourth is, you know. Yeah, man. How you been doing then? How are you doing right now?
I'm doing really well. You know, it's been interesting. It seems like life is kind of really waking up for a lot of people right now.
Yeah.
And so there just seems to be more kind of in the air that feels really kind of happy and fresh to me. And so that's been amazing.
Yeah.
I've been loving that.
It's really nice. And, you know, as I said in the intro for the show, I'd place you in master's status.
Wow.
Can I do that? Is that
Wow.
okay to say? Master status in Ayurveda and acupuncture.
Wow. Okay.
And, yeah, okay. Just take that in. Take it. Yeah, enjoy that. Enjoy that I just classified you as a master,
All right.
if you'd like.
I appreciate it.
So that's something that you follow, maybe
Yeah.
even more pay more attention to than, I don't know, some people it's, you know, might not be paying attention as much as like the weather patterns and the elements,
Right.
and it's something that you really do pay close heed
Right.
to. And
Even it's funny, you're just talking about the weather vane, and my first thought is animals, directionality, those are omens, you know, so in astrology, that's really important stuff. So yeah, yeah, even these kind of simple things, I'm always kind of having that lens in the back of my mind, I guess, huh?
well, I'm going to throw something at you that is like extremely recent, because I was just at the Tucson Botanical Gardens with some family who's been from out of town, and we saw, this was just today, like at late morning, and we saw an owl in one of the trees facing to the west
Okay.
in the daytime, which is kind of rare. I mean, I don't really
Right,
see
right.
owls here.
Right. They're
Yeah.
night owls, right?
Yeah. What do you think about that?
Well, owls are really curious. It's funny that we're getting into this, but because I've been really into omens lately, but owls are a really special omen because they can have various meanings, and some cultures give them kind of actually a little bit heavy meaning, and some give them very like kind of auspicious meaning too. So you can look at them both ways, but directionality is a big piece of it, So facing west is kind of, I feel like I'm jumping in so fast here, but
We are. That's I think what we do here. I think we do that.
So it has to do with Saturn. Saturn's about hard work. Saturn's about delays. It can be a little bit heavy at times, So my interpretation of seeing an owl facing west, if it really spoke to you and kind of this seeing it in the daylight and feeling this sense of like, oh, this isn't really a normal event necessarily, would have a big, that would definitely stand out to me too. And I would imagine it would point towards something to do with working hard right now, or there's going to be some, owls also tend to represent unseen things because so often we don't see them, so there's work that might come out of places you weren't expecting it to, or in some way, some maybe even just some bills that you weren't expecting to pay. I don't want to jinx you by saying watch your car or your house, but
or maybe
yeah.
money I didn't know was there,
or it could be that right, you have this inheritance, Bradford, and it's trying to tune you into it.
Oh great. I have a rich relative.
You do. They're coming for you.
Rich relative.
They're coming for you.
Oh, good. I like that one. Thank you, owl.
Right.
Western owl.
Right.
Yeah. No, that's fascinating. It's really interesting because those things happen. If people are paying attention, and I think they happen a lot if we're looking. And I'm not going to take the credit for that because someone else saw it. So I was like, oh wow, that's amazing. There's the owl, and then at that point, it's kind of like, well, sometimes we attach meaning to it. We do that, and how do you just let it, kind of come into you, what happens
right.
from there, and just like allowing something to open up, right? Like instead of, seeing that and just kind of like looking out and being like, yeah, cool, I'm going to just let this, look out for those signs, right?
Right.
Which is, I think, really cool. Something that's kind of like the term prospiracy, is that it? Where the world is out to like get you in a good way. I think
it's trying to speak to you. Right?
Yeah, it's trying to speak to you. It's trying to like give you these signs and clues to be like, yeah, we got you. It might not be always pleasant, but really trying to like kind of give you the nurturance that you are looking for.
Right. I love that.
I do too, because let's be honest, I can flip to the other side and go into the, they're gonna get me.
They're all out to get me. The world is out to get me.
I want to wrap myself in a Mylar blanket and hide in the closet. Well, that's cool. That's like, we did just dive in, and so I kind of I'm going to reel us back because I want to know about where you grew up, and we've talked about this a little bit, like where you're from, and definitely kind of moving in a back to a different world for a little bit. It's like you're from Vegas.
Yep.
What was that like?
It's funny whenever I mention to people being from Vegas, it's often the reaction. It's like one of those towns, right? Where you're like, what is that like? It's not like, oh, well, I grew up in, Cincinnati or Los Angeles. Like, it's just like, okay, a city. You're like, no, that's Las Vegas. But
yeah,
it
is. It's
right.
like,
it's a one of a kind place. It truly is. And growing up there, honestly, to me, felt very normal because, you don't know any different, right? Your experience is your experience. So to me, it was like, this is what life is like. And it wasn't until moving away and later in life that I kind of was able to, pull myself back from it and see it and say like, oh, wow, no, it's kind of a crazy place to grow up, actually, And, and in ways it is, and in ways that, there's also very normal life. There's suburbs and there's, Best Buy and Starbucks and all that stuff too, So there's normalcy there, but there's certainly a Vegas energy, no matter what.
Yes.
It kind of spreads. So wherever you are, there's that energy exists there.
Right, like you can't really get away from it.
You can't, And I think, so many people move there for reasons around the casino industry or jobs and money and things like that, right? So it's like, even people who live there, they have some ties to that culture, or at least they feel comfortable in that culture enough to be there. So it does. It's everywhere,
Yeah. So the Vegas is, it's an intense place.
Yep.
It seems like an intense place, and for the energy of it, like, you probably weren't aware of it necessarily growing up. Maybe now there's some more like hindsight of, this is this place. But what is that like? Especially you being, someone who works a lot with energy in people, an energetic body. What does that, how was that? How do you see it now through that lens?
It's interesting. I don't feel, when I go back to Vegas, my whole family's back there, so I go back, somewhat regularly, and it's just not a great place for me to be energetically. I feel tired, I feel drained, I feel heavy, I feel lethargic. It does seem to affect me on kind of a physiological and mental, emotional level, for sure. So looking at it, again, it's not my favorite place to be. So, I kind of go see the family, hang out, and then, hit the road and get on out, But it is an interesting place that I've told anybody who's never been there, you should experience it. You should go there. It is such a one-of-a-kind, strange place. These like facades of like fake, the fake Paris hotel and the fake New York, and the, everything that's this kind of strange, I guess maybe the worst aspects of U.S. culture, this like shallow facade of things, and this like enjoyment, this Disneyland kind of feeling for, excess and, for adults to go kind of binge in it, and kind of let go of all their inhibitions, which is also an interesting idea that, I think that is also an important part of culture, is to have that, that kind of...
That was, that sealed the deal on that.
Yeah.
That's like the way that, it's obvious now that, like, that's why Hunter Thompson was,
right.
He went to Vegas.
Right.
Fear and Loathing. It's like kind of really captures something about that world, that part of the world.
Right.
And yet, we've also spoken a little bit about the music scene there, right? Like, you were, we both share a very fondness for punk rock.
Yep.
Like, good punk. And the good
and the
stuff.
bad stuff.
Yeah, not
I
the
like
bad
some of the
stuff.
bad.
You like some of the bad?
I like some.
I guess I like some of the bad, too. There's like... I'm not even going to say it right now, because... I probably would get a little something for it if people were like, "Oh, really? You like that?"
Right.
But I stand by that. There's bands that I like, pop punk bands that really influenced me, that I still hold true to. I've even revisited, the past year, kind of dipping back into some things that I haven't really like listened to in a long time. I'm like, yeah, I do like that. I'm not gonna like listen to it all the time,
right?
But it has a special place in my heart, and I'm still like, I realize that's why I loved it,
right? And
that's why I got into punk rock,
right?
So what about you? Like, how did you get into it? How'd you get into that world?
It kind of it was one of those kind of typical story. I didn't have an older brother, but it was like my friend, had the cool, we were 13, 14, and there was, he was probably all of 17, but he seemed like he was, way older and way cooler. And, he was the punk rocker guy, and so we like grab his tapes, his cassette tapes. And that was my first exposure. And, for me, a big part of it was kind of growing up in the suburbs of Vegas, and just this kind of normal middle class, mundane existence was like this whole new world that existed that I had no clue about, and hearing these wild bands, I was, kind of getting into I was into the Doors and Led Zeppelin, getting into rock and roll basically, and just hearing these crazy, like Naked Raygun or Black Flag and the Sex Pistols, and just going, what the hell is this, and just being so blown away by it.
Yeah.
And something about just that kind of the rebellious part of it, really spoke to me in this way of like, it was like another world opening,
Yeah.
So it was huge, So that was kind of my first exposure. And as you know, back at that point, the only way you could find stuff was, friends, brothers, cassette tapes, or, and then you meet a couple friends who, it was so hard to come across that stuff. These days, obviously, you can get it anywhere and listen to any band you want, but there's that magic of it, and like, going to finding the independent record store and just taking a wild guess and grabbing a Dead Kennedys record and looking at the cover, you know, and going,
Yeah.
I got, you know, whatever, $13.
Yeah.
I can only buy one album, and then kind of, you know, deciding and then buying that one, you know.
And things weren't like laid out for you back then as much now, you know.
Right.
There wasn't lists. It was like, oh, here's the top 10 classic. It's like we were still kind of, it was just still fresh
Yeah.
and there. So yeah, Dead Kennedys, Misfits, you know, these bands are like, yeah, they had a name for themselves, but like we weren't able to find, you just had to really search for
You
it.
had to want it.
You had to really want it.
Right.
Yeah.
And to
then
earn
just-
it.
and earn it. Yeah.
Right.
Like there wasn't magazines, there weren't online blogs, or nothing. And great that that's happening now, because, you know, I've found some things that I didn't know about and gotten to hear stuff that I didn't get to hear then.
Yeah.
But like, I mean, I remember like Maximum Rock and Roll was that magazine. I don't know if you ever read
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
Like that would
yeah.
kind of have some stuff and things, but again, it was always just like, I'm gonna just take a shot here and maybe I'll find something that I like. And then the local music scene, that was really big, at least for me. So like, you know, some of the local bands that really were like
Yep.
stepways into these classics, you
Yeah.
know, where it's
Yeah.
like, oh, why does that band sound like that?
Oh,
well,
I
they're
still
kinda-
remember, you know, this little Vegas band, Boba Fett Youth. What a great name, right?
What was it?
Boba Fett Youth.
Dude, nice.
And yeah, you know, and we're like 14, and these guys come over to our backyard and play a show for, you know, all these,
Yeah.
they were probably 20, 21.
Yeah.
And it was just the coolest thing I'd ever seen, you know. And, you know, they never made a huge name, but that band is such, I still have their 7 inches and their
Yes.
album, and,
Yeah.
you know, and it's just pretty, you know, run-of-the-mill
Yeah.
punk rock with some cool Star Wars, you know, solos in there and stuff like that.
Han
But it was
solos.
so shaping. It was,
Han
it shaped
Solo.
me. Totally. There's totally a Han Solo.
There gotta be.
But yeah, you're so right. You know, it was
Yeah.
such another window into the
Yeah.
fourth dimension. Maybe is that the fourth dimension?
The fourth dimension. Yeah,
The local music scene.
Yeah, local music.
When you're that
scene.
age.
Yeah, I think so. I think you're touching into something at that point that feels like, yeah. I mean, it was so special and like freeing. I remember going to shows, and I imagine the same feeling, like you said, just this like freedom to be like, I'm going to. Like, I'm rebelling against something that I really see. I see an issue with this like system. I see an issue. There's something wrong, and why is no one like doing something about it? And there's music that is speaking to that, and like that's really powerful, you know,
Yeah.
especially in that kind of zone of when you're a teen. And
Oh, it's so huge, right?
yeah.
It's part of like shaping who you become as an
Yeah.
adult.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So I imagine in Vegas, because you were like, we had Philadelphia near us, and so, you know, there's definitely like a lot of people coming through. Were there big bands that would come through Vegas at that time? You know, were there venues for that?
You know, it was kind of I that's one thing I look back, the cursing and the blessing of being in Las Vegas,
Yeah.
you know, was it's not really a big town for independent music. I mean, or independent culture in general.
Yeah.
And, you know, we had a club, like a medium-sized club, and some, you know, like the Circle Jerks would come through, or, you know, some of
Yeah.
the like kind of bigger bands for sure. But, you know, as far as like a culture of underground music, it was tiny, you know,
Yeah.
so tiny, because that town just didn't support,
Mm-hmm.
and still really doesn't support the arts and independent culture and punk culture, you know?
Yeah.
And so looking at it now, you know, but I see, you know, I moved to Portland at one point, right? And
Yeah.
I saw the blessing of Las Vegas, you know, and the scene that I thought was just so ridiculous and tiny, you know. And I got to Portland, and it was like, you know, there's a show every night of the week, and,
Yeah.
you know, all the cliques that, you know, you could be in whatever clique you want to be in, and,
Yeah.
you know, everybody's in a band, and everything's really cool and already happening. And we didn't have that in Vegas. And I think that what that really actually inspired was like that DIY ethic of making things happen. Like if you wanted a show to happen,
Yeah.
you had to be the one, you know, and
Yeah.
we, you know, rent generators and find abandoned buildings out in the middle of the desert, or there was a cave, you know, like
cave?
so a show in a cave, you know,
my
like it
gosh.
was really like bootstrapped together scene, you know.
Yeah.
And I think it also made us closer as friends, because there were so few of us, you know. There wasn't really
Yeah.
cliques, because, you know, there was a couple crusty punks and a couple emo kids, and,
Yeah.
you know, the political punks, and we only had each other, so we all knew each other and we all hung out, you know. And it wasn't nearly
Yeah.
as like that high school social clique vibe that I feel like I noticed in Portland, or, you know, probably other big scenes, probably Philadelphia too, you know.
Right,
Where
right.
because there was, you could do that kind of thing, but for us we just didn't have that option really. So it was a really special thing that I look on really fondly. And even though we didn't have venues to, hold shows in all the time, and they get closed down, and there wasn't like centralized cafes to like gather at, you know, but there'd just be these really kind of spontaneous happenings almost, you know, out in the middle of the desert. You know, abandoned tubes is where we had one show venue for,
tubes.
yeah, until the cops would find it and they'd break it up, and then, you know, and then find another place. And so there's something really cool that I totally now appreciate and love so much about kind of the lack of the scene there, you know, that we had.
Yeah,
that's really special.
Makes it extra special. Going to Kinko's, making flyers, and doing just all the like promotion that was like, yeah, you knew that the only way to see something was to do that,
right?
And just word of mouth flyers. Like there was no other way.
Yep.
There was no way to, to get people to know about it. Something more about that being more tangible, I think, is really cool.
Right. You know, and that was also the time, I think I told you this story before too, but, you know, like the decline of Western civilization, that movie, you know, was like my Bible, you know, my friend's Bible. And because that was pre-internet. Yeah, we had that. And so you have the recorded version. And that was our like window kind of outside of our town and our situation, you know, and you'd see like, oh, there's all these things going on. Yeah. And so we would just watch that on repeat and you know, memorize all the lines to it and probably emulate the people for better or worse. And you know, but it was a cool, or that's how we connected to a larger, you know, kind of network outside of just our little town. And when I met the director, Penelope Spears, a few years ago. Right. She was at the Loft, and they were showing Wayne's World, which is another movie she did. That's right. I just learned about that. I learned about that from you, and then I also, oh my gosh, they're doing these like. Reunited Apart series, this guy online, and so he's been doing all these 80s movies like, oh man, some of them, Ferris Bueller, Back to the Future, Ghostbusters, Wayne's World. And so she came on there because she was the director. Yep. Which is crazy. Right. She's the director of Wayne's World and Decline of Western Civilization. Right. And so if anyone has not seen Decline of Western Civilization, I think really the only way that you would be able to see it now, if you know, is if you're like a diehard punk fan, you know, or like you have that in your history and you never saw it. Because if you just go to watch it now, it's probably not going to really translate. You're not going to get it. But for those of us that were watching it then, I mean, I just wore out my VHS copy of it too. It was like just constantly like, oh my gosh, there's Fear, X, Germs, like Black these Flag, bands, Black Flag. And you're getting this like intimate window into this scene where it's like, that's LA, that's like punk, whoa, it's like real it's
deal.
It's
scary. It's a little scary.
It is a scary movie, and at that age especially, you know, it's it's good.
So you met her? Did you meet her, or just? I did.
You know, what's funny is I was watching Wayne's World, and I had to go pee, and I get up and I walk out to the lobby, you know, and she's just like sitting there on the bench, like playing on her phone or whatever, you know, waiting for the movie because she's going to give it like a little talk at the end. And I just like froze, you know, and I went in and I was like peeing and taking forever. And then I was like, I gotta talk to her. I just gotta talk to her, you know, and I totally had one of those like, you know, fanboy, like mumble, can't find my words because, you know, it sounds silly, and it is in a way, but it meant so much to me. That movie meant, I mean, you know, I kind of told her what I just told you, you know, what it was a way for me to like to see beyond like the confines of the world I existed in, and that was such a huge life-changing experience for me, you know? And even if it was about kind of like drug and boozed out punk rockers and you know, like it was so important to me. And so I told her, and she was so cool, super funny, super like dark, dry sense of humor. And she said something like, I'm glad I made Wayne's World. That's what's like made it so I don't have to worry about money anymore. So now I can just make whatever I want, you know, or something. She has this very funny sense of humor about it all, and doesn't take herself super seriously, and was so cool. Awesome. It was a neat experience.
No, I think that is special, you know, meaning like, the hero in a way, you know. It's like it's true. It's true. I
mean, no diss on Wayne's World. That's a fantastic movie too. But
they're like totally different. It's just so you would never know that it was the same person that directed these movies. It's like, they're both awesome classics. Oh, that's so fun. Oh my gosh. So being in Vegas and just like going through the music world there, and when you got out, like, how did you get involved in kind of the path you started from there, like how to do, because we kind of have similar backgrounds in that way. Like,
I think so too.
You go from punk rock to, which I don't talk much about the work I do, but being a somatic experiencing practitioner, craniosacral therapist, as one of my, livelihoods, it's interesting because I noticed that in some, in the natural healing profession, I know a lot of people who had that background. They have tattoos. They were really into punk rock, and then they move into like the massage world, and the therapist's role. Acupuncture. It's interesting, right? Yep. I don't know. What do you? Yeah. So like, I'm curious how your path kind of meandered from that, or what was like the progression. It's a big transition question window for you to go.
Well, that's kind of what it was, too, I guess. It's funny. I think it was like by the time I hit my, probably early 20s, I just kind of came across some of these things, like yoga, meditation, and Ayurveda, and they all were really interesting to me. And for some reason, I just had this kind of interest, this kind of like, I don't know, maybe from the outside, like, oh, that's kind of interesting. I don't know if I would have said cool quite yet,
Yeah.
But it slowly just kind of pulled me in. And I think there was definitely this transition that happened through my 20s, really, where I started, I became a massage therapist and I started doing some yoga, and I was already a vegetarian, but, like looking at diet stuff and, reading Eat Right for Your Blood Type and, checking out basic Ayurvedic principles. And, so there was an interest there in that kind of, I don't really like the word self-improvement, but just kind of checking out.
That's more like 60s, like the self-improvement world from the hippies. But it's, something, self-improvement,
I don't know what the word is, but there was this little bit of morphing, and as I kind of pulled more back from like, I was still doing my fair share of really late nights and probably still a lot of drinking and things like that, but I had this interest and I was doing some yoga pretty regularly at that point. And, just seeing those subtle changes when, you kind of feel better in your body is kind of a cool sensation. And then, you're like, oh, whatever, and then you go drink the next night and you feel like crap or whatever, right? So it was like this kind of metamorphosis thing kind of happening, I feel like, right? So these worlds became kind of like separate worlds, but also intermingled worlds for me. So I still had my foot kind of in both worlds in a lot of ways,
Yeah.
And I think over time it just kind of got a little more away. I think as you get older, of course, once you get through your 20s, you change, you become a different person, right? And I think part of that growth was kind of moving away from youth culture in some ways, because I wasn't really a youth anymore. And so to me it was a natural progression, sort of. But looking at it now, I really see it as part of that same path. It took me some years to kind of say like, oh no, that's the same path for me, I should say, I guess. But, it was, and I think it was like questioning reality, right? Like, what is this life? What are we here for? What's the purpose of life? What's important? What are values that are important, right? And for me, it started when you're a teenager especially, but, you get into punk and you hear Jello Biafra ranting about something you never heard of, and it's pretty cool. And, but you're kind of doing that same process you do, is, for lack of a better word, in a spiritual practice too, right? You're questioning reality. And so to me, I was like, oh no, that wasn't really such a different path. Yeah, it was loud and, a lot of like action and partying, but it was the same thing. That there felt like something was missing to me in life, and there was something more than what I was experiencing. And so it was really just a continuation of that quest to figure out, what's my life about? Who am I? What do I want to do? What, and not necessarily just taking what you're presented with. At face value,
Right. Yeah. I think that's really well said. Like, and I know we hear this a lot, right? I mean, I do, at least in things, people I follow and listen to, and it's like, it's that big question, right? Like, who am I? The big me, the big I, and asking that, questioning authority, kind of like the ultimate question, the big one, right? Like, what is going on here?
What's the point?
What's the point? Yeah, like, is the point to just, suburban home, 2.5 children kind of thing, that could be. People I know are very satisfied with that, and I want to make clear, because I probably in the youthful days would be like, screw that, they don't know what they're doing. And I don't know what they're doing, because they could very well be following that path to more expansive opening in their, in their consciousness and awareness, because I realize that now,
Yep.
it was like limited thinking, just,
Yep.
okay, these people. But there's also kind of on a relative level, right? Yeah, maybe like there is more to just kind of,
Right.
work till I drop dead.
Right. Have the
And
big house.
And I have all this
cars,
unused vacation time, and now I'm gone.
Right.
And what do I do with that? Where's that
Right.
vacation time going? I can't give it away.
Right.
And I really wanted to go to Vegas with that.
Put it all on red.
Put it all on red, man. It's all on red. Wheel of Fortune. Yeah, so there's that questioning. And when you started to notice you were feeling better, you'd do something, you'd be like, oh, actually, that feels kind of good. Feels better than like beating my body up. And that's nice. And at that point, there was a kind of a movement then where you're like, okay, I want to follow this more. I'm like curious about it. Was there a curiosity? Like, what more is there?
Sure. Yeah. And this is getting, I guess, now we can shift into full woo.
Full woo.
To me, there's very much a karmic piece to
Yeah.
that, right? Like if you've done something in your past lives, if you believe in past lives, you're going to have a predisposition to that in this life more than likely too, right? So to me, those things almost pulled me more than, I guess there's some mutual curiosity in it. But to me, the things sort of came to me.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like tapping that feeling within me that went, whoa, holy shit. Like this, I'm supposed to be doing this, or I'm supposed to be here and with this person or in this program or whatever it was, and that was huge. Is developing that intuition too,
Yeah.
That
So
makes
just
sense.
So the intuition, just following that inner voice that was kind of guiding you along.
Yeah, and
Listening
of
to
course, correlate with very specific, Dr. Lad, who's an Ayurvedic doctor he's Indian, but based out of Albuquerque, was a huge one. I mean, life-changing in the same way Penelope Spears and and Black Flag was,
Yes.
like being in his presence for me was just such a life-changing experience that I can't describe in any other way. And, I have a spiritual teacher, Amritananda Mai, same thing. I got there as 24-year-old, kind of still a punk kid, and bawling my eyes out, and not knowing why, but just knowing I'm supposed to be here and I'm supposed to be around this person, and
So you just mentioned two teachers. I'm wondering if you can expound a little on kind of that movement towards them. How you ended up being in their presence,
right,
and going in that training that you did.
Yeah, and they're kind of pretty intermingled things for me, but they're sort of separate experiences, I suppose. Amma is Amritananda Mai. She's an Indian saint, right, in southern India, and she comes to the U.S., every year. Not right now, of course, but and she was going through L.A. A person I was dating at the time and I were, kind of just like, let's go check this out. And I was pretty, open, like, cool, let's go check out this crazy, strange thing, right?
Yeah.
Drive to L.A., register, do this retreat thing, and I mean, it really was kind of that simple and quick. And I still remember the very moment of like being in that room, and when she walked in the room and the way it hit me, and then just spending that like week-long weekend crying and, just acting very strange compared to what I would imagine was going to be happening. And I remember getting in a fight with my girlfriend at the time, about it, because I was just transfixed. I literally wanted to just sit, and I didn't really know what really like meditate. Not that I probably ever will, but I just wanted to sit with her and meditate, or whatever meditation meant to me, and watch and just be in that kind of aura, I guess, for lack of a better word. I just knew it was the right thing.
Yeah.
I felt that kind of inner pure quality about being in her presence. I felt this desire to like reach for more spiritual experiences by being near her. Like, all these kind of amazing feelings were happening that I didn't know what they were, how to explain, and I still kind of really don't, but it just was happening. It was a real experience for me, and and I hadn't felt that around other, I've been exposed to Yogananda and some other the Maharaj or whatever, or what's his name? Sorry.
Ramana Maharishi.
No. The guy who came, the Beatles guy, Maharishi.
Oh, Maharishi.
Sorry.
Right. Yeah, there's. Yeah.
You know, and I was like, oh, they seem cool. They say some nice things, but it was such a different experience to be around her for me. You know,
In
so
person.
I knew I'm supposed to be. This is my teacher. You know,
Yeah.
I knew it very clearly.
Yeah, and you said when you were around her, it was a feeling of like peace and just feeling really good.
And kind of like unconditional love. You know, I don't know that I even still have the words. It's just it's a feeling, and for me, I don't ever want to get out of it. When I'm there, I could stay there forever. It feels so good.
It's kind of interesting just because from just transitioning from the last show, because I was speaking with kind of like this way of helping people, you know, if we can be in our best self and feel good and just like live in joy, whatever that means for you, how that can really rub off on other people, and how that's such a gift, you know, if we're able to be like in a pretty uplifted, positive way in our lives, that people feel that, you know, you feel what it's like to be around somebody who's happy and it feels good. It feels really good. As opposed to when someone's just like, you know, freaking out or, you know, not in a darker, you know, little bit yuckier emotions. It's, you know, sometimes doesn't feel as great. And so what you're explaining and describing, you know, being around her as just, it feels really good. And the words aren't even there, but you just want more of it. You want to just be around it.
Yep.
And how special it is, you know, and I think for these kind of teachers, they have that way of just being able to hold that space so that it can really attract that feeling for other people. And it's hard to explain if you've never experienced it, I guess, you know, but people have. I know people have. Yeah, I just use an example of like you're around friends and loved ones, and you know that when they're not annoying you, it can feel really good and like uplifting. And I think we have more sense of that maybe from the past year, just with like being able to connect with others and how good that connection feels. Like we really know that we need it, and it feels really good. And you know, I think that modern science is kind of touching in with some of this, is, you know, the mirrored neuron network that knows now that, okay, we are resonating from someone else. We can experience what other person is. And if this teacher is in that like space, it feels great to be around them. They're just like living, breathing it.
Yeah, you know, and I think it, for me, again, just my personal experience, it puts me in that place, like I feel my best self. You know, you feel that it's like a feeling of being unconditionally loved. Yeah. And then it makes you feel whatever version we can of unconditional. You know, you think better about the people around you. You think about your family, your friends, you think about your enemies, and you just feel a little better. You know, you feel like that interconnectedness with other people, it becomes more, that light starts to shine brighter in you, you know? Yeah. And what an amazing thing, right? To feel.
It is. Like, I want that. I want more of that. Yeah. The experiences I've had that are in that arena is like, I don't want to lose that. I don't, and then it kind of slips away, and you're like, oh, no, like the like human potential that's there, and like, oh wow, this is possible. I can like be like that. I can feel that, and it just feels really good. It makes other people feel good, you know, being your best self. I think that's maybe different for everybody, like, because from whatever background they're coming from, whatever, you know, if it's a religious or spiritual background, if it's a vocation, you know, it can happen anywhere in whatever form, you know, you're in. It doesn't have to look a certain way. And that is very, very special. I just smelled a bunch of weed. Somebody's. Do you smell that?
See, my brain went to skunk, but I guess we were actually on the same page.
Great, right? Yeah, you thought skunk, and
I said animal, skunk. And you said skunk.
Which direction is that coming from?
Yeah, right. What is the omen there?
Skunk is from the south. Somebody doing that. Yeah. Anyway, that was
nice segue, huh?
Yeah, good segue, and we, Anyway, I think that's just really beautiful. And yeah, I don't know. I get really inspired just even thinking about that and talking about this. Like, what's my best self? What does that look like? And what will I do to allow that to come forward, you know? And I know people, you know, I have a lot, there's blockages there, right? There's things that kind of like can stop it and block it, and finding the ways to remove those blockages. And anyway, I imagine that is also what you are working with people, and the work you do is just trying to find those ways to like kind of remove the blockages.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
Clear
Very
it
much.
so that it can have that clear channel.
Yep.
So anyway, back to the following the teachers. When you decided to go study Ayurveda with Dr. Vasant Lad, maybe first also you could just describe in a easy to understand way, maybe just what Ayurveda is.
Yeah, sure. So Ayurveda is, the easiest way I tend to break it down is, do you know Chinese medicine? Do you know acupuncture? It's a lot like that stuff, but it comes from India. So it's kind of the natural healing modality that comes out of the South Indian kind of subcontinent area. So, but it uses a lot of different principles than like typical Western medical doctors might use, and it's looking at life kind of from an elemental type perspective. So we're looking at the earth element, the water, fire, ether, and air elements, right? And each of us is kind of composed of these elements, and at different ratios. So we want to look at what the ratios are for each individual, and then how those ratios interact with the larger world around us. So like the wind here, how does that going to affect me? If I have a lot of excess wind in my body, it's going to affect it differently than somebody else who might have a lot more water, right? So we're looking at these kind of components, and then using food, diet, lifestyle practices like exercise or yoga, and things like that to help bring yourself into more balance with nature around you so that you live a happier, healthier life. So it's a very kind of individualized medicine in the sense that each of us will need some different things. So it's not like you just give, a lot of people know, maybe ashwagandha is kind of a common herb that a lot of people have at least heard of. It's an Ayurvedic herb that it's a tonic herb, and a lot of people know it for energy and things like that. And it is, and it works very well like that. But for a certain person, it might not work so well as it will another person, depending on this elemental makeup, or what they call the doshas. So there's Vata, Pitta, Kapha doshas, and that's probably a good summary, I guess.
Yeah.
Or a good place to start with it. It goes pretty in depth too, but that's a nice overview. So looking at ourselves as individuals and how we interact with the environment around us, and bringing ourselves more in alignment with the environment around us.
So maybe I'm going to throw out an example because this might be helpful for some folks. The Vata element, right? And maybe just focusing more on the element, like some of the signs that you might have an imbalance with the Vata element in you could be like anxiety, spaciness,
right?
Maybe joint issues, digestive troubles.
Yep, gas, bloating, cracking joints. There's a tendency to mentally be a little bit all over the place. You can be very creative and come up with great ideas, bringing them out of the ethers.
Yeah.
Those ideas can also be flash and gone just as quickly too. So there's some funnier aspects too. But Vata will have more issues with the air element since it's primarily rooted in that element, right? And then so you look at that, and like today's a very windy day, which is obviously the air element. So somebody who's a Vata person, Bradford's got a lot of Vata.
I do.
You might be a little bit more flustered by the wind and by this kind of day where it's dry and windy, and you may you'll have some more physical issues, or you may have more mental or emotional issues around it too.
I do.
Yeah.
And so for me, something that I find that works well is like the nasya, right?
Yep.
I put oil up my nose.
Crazy, right?
Which is wild. I tell people that, and to be honest, out here a little bit more in drier climates, like I don't necessarily need that back east when I go visit family, but here, oil up the nose, oil like sometimes in the ears, just like
oil
getting
everywhere.
That barrier.
Yeah.
And
it's huge.
It's huge, and it works. Oh, great! Just for anything, just even trapping the particulates that are in the air that get in there and kind of, just hold it. But it's, just helps like breathe easier and,
and it protects the mucous membranes really, really well. That's why the Nasya, the nose oil, is so important, because as our sinus cavities get more dried out, they'll tend to get inflamed, right? And when there's inflammation, the body will then sort of produce some mucus to try to, what the body's essentially trying to do is lubricate the sinus passages. But that mucus can be kind of a vector for infections to set in and things like that too, right? Or, if you have allergies, they'll get worse because of the inflammation in the mucus. So the oil is essentially creating that barrier, and keeping the nasal passages lubricated. So you can do, I have people do their noses, their ears, up the back end even sometimes is actually a really good treatment for Vata. So, but yeah, oil, if I was going to give one medicine for Vata, it would probably be a big tub of oil.
Big tub of oil. Yep. Just jump in.
Dive on in.
Dive in head first. Have a little Scrooge McDuck bath in there. And good
reference.
Thank you. Little DuckTales for all you 90s kids. Woo. I think I know the entire theme.
We are
song
of the same
to
generation.
Yeah, we are. We're right on there. So like we can literally go into every show and commercial and toy and just know exactly what we're talking about. Which that was funny. It's funny because that's originally what the whole podcast was going to be, was just going into like 80s and 90s pop culture and getting that. But we seep it in. I'd like to sprinkle it in and also have things that are kind of useful.
Follow your real dream, Bradford.
Yeah, follow your real dream.
80s and 90s commercials and cartoons.
That's it. I do. Sometimes I'll just turn on like commercial montages, like an hour-long 80s.
I've been there. Or you remember the commercial and you're like, I gotta find it. And it's like My Buddy or something.
Yeah,
right?
My Buddy, exactly. I've watched that. My Kid Sister.
Kid Sister.
That's the sequel toy. The jingles are so great.
They're right there, huh?
So bubblegum.
You try to remember all like the positive affirmations, but what wins in the end?
Yeah, I love you. I'm
amazing
one with
commercial.
The universe.
The Punky Brewster theme.
Yeah, then it's like, I'm doing the meditation, and then all of a sudden Punky Brewster and Alf are right there, and I'm in Mel Mac turf. Yep, that's how it is. But I'll use that. Use it.
The mantra.
It's a tool. It's a tool. So so that's a great way. And so I love how that system it looks at everything. It looks at every piece and finds very specific ways to target what is going to be most beneficial. Keep that food out, add that in. Do this yoga pose.
Yep.
That yoga pose is going to be good for you for right now and this time. It might not later, but right now it's going to be good. And I know we've geeked out on this because, I'm a huge Ayurvedic fan. And so, the practices, you can really go like deep.
You can.
In there. And so, just talking like, yeah.
Well, I was going to just say really quick too, which is something I always make mention of too, is that there is actually, there's an unhealthiness layer in some of these things that I deal with patients a lot, where you can get so micro fixated on something that you let it rule your life, and that's really not healthy either. So Ayurveda is very much a middle path type of medicine, so
guilty as charged.
Right. We're all humans. I love a bowl of ice cream every once in a while too, just like anybody else, and it's a really important part to remember that they call it orthorexia, which is kind of an over-analyzing and over-fixation on health and things like that. So a big part of my practice is sometimes just helping people be gentle with themselves and forgive themselves and be a human being.
Very important.
Life is short, life is short.
And we're pleasure creatures that are tuned to that. So, in a healthy way, you want to let yourself have some of these fun things, to do. And then other times, maybe just kind of, I like we said, middle road.
I often use this, I call it like the 80-20 rule. So it's what you do 80% of the time that's most important, right? So if you're eating good for your doshas 80% of the time, you're doing golden. You're going to be just fine. Enjoy that cup of coffee, or have that birthday cake, or like life is short and should be fun. And joy is a big part of Ayurveda too. And having that. Some of these foods that we would, we tend to call bad foods, for life, bring us joy. They lighten our hearts, and that's a really important quality too to remember. So, of course, there's always, that doesn't mean do the DuckTales into the bowl of tricks, and live on tricks or Lucky Charms, right?
I've
Just
had
to keep bringing in some more references.
Had a lifetime of that stuff. Cereals, Count Chocula, Frankenberry. Blueberry. Yeah, that's like, look at that. So,
yep. Anyway, sorry, I just wanted to throw that in there too.
We know we're not sponsored by these cereals because I don't think they're around anymore. So that's that. But yeah, I think it's great just to like not being over the top with it all.
Yep.
So you had, how long was the training where you did this training at Ayurveda at the school with Dr. Lad in New Mexico?
Yep.
And what was that like? How long was it?
It's a 2-year program. It was amazing, absolutely life-changing for kind of some of the same reasons like when I was talking about Amma. He's a very central figure in my life, and he's an Ayurvedic doctor, so he did his schooling in India and was ran a hospital there for 30 years or something right before he moved to the States. But he's just one of those people that when you're in his presence, you feel his experience and you feel his love and his humility. It just shines right out of him. And so learning from him just feels like knowledge just sort of seeps into you. It doesn't feel like an intellectual process. It feels like osmosis, and that's been my experience with him. So there's a lot of, technical skills I was learning and doing all these trainings and things, but part of it was listening to him talk just about whatever he wanted to talk about, know, and it was all helpful. And it all sort of grounded me in the sense of what it means to be a healer. And I mean that in the way, not like in an ego way, but in how to be a vessel to help other people heal. Because, ultimately it's not about me. I'm not Dr. Jesus, right? It's about being
Dr. Jesus.
Or at least this is how I look at it, right? It's like I try my best to be a conduit for wisdom and healing to come through me to help the other person. And the less attached I feel to that, the better it seems to go for all parties involved,
Yeah.
So that's the biggest thing I took away from him. I saw this person who was, nothing short of, in my mind, a magician, with his level of intellectual knowledge, his healing abilities and all these things. And he was so humble about it. I mean, you would see him walking down the street and walk right by him and not even guess, the wealth of knowledge and experience this person has.
He's really cool, and I haven't had the time around him like you have. There's a great documentary that actually we saw when we were together, and that's great. That's what is it called?
The Doctor from India.
The Doctor from
India. And it's around online if people want to watch it. It's around. It's a beautiful movie.
Yeah. And that was before you went to acupuncture school.
Yeah.
That's a lot. I mean,
tell me about it.
Acupuncture school is it's considered a doctorate.
Yeah.
So that was 3 years after too?
Yeah. It was a 4-year program. I did it in 3. I just wanted to kind of fire through it, so I kind of crunched it into 3.
And where was that? That school was
up in Boulder. I went to a school up in Boulder, Colorado.
Yeah.
So I was up there, after I got done in New Mexico. Keep a boring story as short as possible. There's not licensure for Ayurveda in the States. So it's not really something you can legally practice really well. And I wanted to be kind of more of a clinician, and I knew I wanted to do that. So one of my teachers there at the school was also an acupuncturist.
Yeah.
Dr. Claudia Welch, and she's amazing in her own right as well. And she really encouraged me to go do it, So I just kind of packed my bags and moved to Boulder and decided that's what I'm doing.
Yeah.
So then went up to Boulder, did the acupuncture, Chinese medicine, herbology program.
And so, and what was it like? Because, I mean, like you said, acupuncture is kind of like came out of Ayurveda, but there's differences.
Yep.
So, what would that be like? How do you explain acupuncture? Now, obviously, I think more people are familiar with acupuncture than Ayurveda. How would you like give a synopsis of acupuncture?
I often give it a very simple synopsis, and I give it a very practical kind of definition. And to me, what acupuncture is essentially doing is helping the body to kick in its own healing mechanism on its own. So it's working through the nervous system primarily. So when you put the needle into the body, it's going to activate that nerve that's going to then fire a specific area in the brain that then tells whatever part of the body you're trying to fix, like, hey, we need some help here. And so it can send blood flow to the area. It can help relax the muscles, and, anti-inflammatory hormones, and endorphins, and enkephalins, things like this. And it triggers the parasympathetic nervous system, which is the kind of rest, heal, relax part of our nervous system.
The vagus nerve.
Yeah, the vagus nerve. Keeping with the Vegas themes.
That's too perfect.
It was good. It's almost like maybe I set it up for you, but I promise I didn't. So anyway, so it works on the body's nervous system, and it helps the body to do its thing, so to speak, right?
Yeah.
You can look at it through the lens of kind of traditional Chinese medicine, that there's a meridian system that runs through the body, which are kind of these energetic channels, and we're sort of essentially balancing these channels. I love simple analogies, so to me it's like being a plumber.
Yeah.
I know where the clogs and the pipes
Like a
are,
Mario
and
brother.
I just need to unclog that pipe. And
Mario
flush
Brothers.
it. Mario Brothers, yep. Warp zones, things like this. That's what I do. I'm Mario.
Mario. Not or not Luigi.
Never Luigi.
Never Luigi.
Never
Always
be that
Mario.
guy. Don't ever call me Luigi.
No, you're
No,
Mario, and you're the Mario of the acupuncture world.
And the Mario of the acupuncture world, I just got a star. Let's see what happens, right?
It is true. You get really cool when you get the star.
You do.
So then, yeah, I love that though.
No, I should say I give people the star, right?
give people the star.
I give them
And
acupuncture, they
feel
get the
like
star,
that.
and they go dun 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 dun.
Yeah,
dun.
they feel like they got the star.
Yeah.
Feels like that for a while, and then they
Right.
got to get another one.
Right.
Come back.
Right.
Until they
It's getting so silly.
rid of Bowser. I know, it's ridiculous. Oh my gosh, but it's good because I think that point will come across more for people. So I really like how you said that, and then and also, if you did, I don't know if you did say this with acupuncture, you are also balancing the elements.
Oh, certainly, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So
So use a
it's
different set of elements.
A different set of elements.
However,
in
yeah,
acupuncture.
you work with the elements as well, and
Yeah.
they'll each have proclivity to certain people. Will have different kind of arrangement of elements. Different foods will have elemental makeups, right? So you can look at that. And again, environment is a huge part of it too. So we live in a very hot and dry place, right? So the
Yes.
fire element's very strong here,
Yes, it
and
is.
the wind element or air element is also very strong here. So
Yeah.
we deal with a lot of complications around those things. A lot of the diseases I see are going to be from those things, right? If we
Yeah.
lived up in Portland, we'd probably see a very different set of symptomology coming up very regularly. A lot more phlegm and gunk and lung heaviness and things like that are more prominent up there than they are down here.
Yeah.
So
And you have a community acupuncture clinic that you own and operate.
yep.
Tell me about
It's
it.
true. You're on to me. Yeah. So
You got it.
yeah, it's funny. I kind of operate in these like very interconnected and sort of separate worlds in a way. So I have an acupuncture clinic called Common Roots Acupuncture in Tucson.
Yeah.
And it's a model based on accessibility for patients. It operates on a sliding scale, so it's affordable for people to come in and get regular treatments. And it gives patients kind of the power to make a call on what they can afford and not make cost as much of a barrier to accessing care. So
Yeah.
I love that part about it.
Yeah.
And so yeah, it's a group style clinic. So I'll often see a handful of people in a room together, and then you kind of bring in that nice healing energy of the collective healing, much like you feel like when you're in like a gym class or a workout class or a yoga class or something like that, right? There's that collective healing energy that I think is really cool too. So
Yeah.
I love that part of it.
Yeah. It's a beautiful space. I got to tour it like a
Thanks.
month ago or something.
Yeah.
And then it's just so cool. It's
Yeah.
a really cool spot.
Thanks.
Really, really close to here right now. And so, and you're also doing both. I mean, you're practicing, you have the clinic, but you also practice Ayurveda there.
Yeah,
as
I
well.
see Ayurvedic patients and Vedic Astrology patients, kind of on the times I'm not sticking the needles, basically. So
Vedic Astrology.
yes,
Tell
what's
me
up with that?
about that.
Yeah, so Vedic Astrology. It's called Jyotish in India, so that's the actual name for it. And it's it's real. All the Vedic sciences are very intermingled, really. So I've kind of obviously just had a fascination with all things in the Vedic world. So after Ayurveda, you start hearing little bits about Jyotish and how that might play some influence in your life. And I got my chart read and did these things, right? And to be honest, it wasn't something I thought I'd ever really study. I just thought it was kind of cool. But I started studying one day, and it, of course, had to do with like a planetary transit that was happening at the time. And I just got super fascinated by it and just decided like I am going to learn this. So I just this is probably 7-8 years ago now, and just dove in, and I've just like loved it so much. So it's the Vedic system of astrology. It's different than Western astrology. There's some crossovers. There's a lot of differences too in the way you interpret charts. It can be different, and some of it's a lot of technical stuff that's a little bit nerdy, probably, than most people would want to go into. But yeah, so it's the astrology system in India. You can look at things like people's health. So I can read charts from an Ayurvedic perspective too. So you can look at health issues in somebody's charts. You can look ahead and see what's going to happen and say, okay, this period coming up is a good time to be careful with your gallbladder or, injuries, things like that. So you can use it from a health perspective. You can look at the doshas or the elements in somebody's chart too and get a sense of it and get sometimes it's just more confirmation about what you've found in person.
Don't use your knees during this week.
Right. Yeah. No matter what you do, get a piggyback ride. I'm telling you. But you can look at all kinds of things, right? It's like any astrology system, really. So I most people, I always joke, people want to know, when am I getting paid? When am I getting laid? Those are like the two biggest questions, but you can look at all aspects of life.
Is it really? Is that what people?
Of course it is.
Like, what am I?
I'm being a little bit silly about it, but. Yeah. People want to know about career stuff, right? And love.
Yeah,
those
career and love.
What other big things are there in life, really, right?
Nothing.
There's that spiritual alignment part, but whatever.
Come on. Come on.
No, but it's great. You can look at people's you can look at karmas in somebody's chart and see their aptitude for certain things. So somebody may want to run a business and they might not really actually be cut out for it. And so you can sort of help them kind of, guide them into a way to have those experiences that'll be successful for them. So that's really cool.
Yeah.
You can look at what else? Love life stuff, of course. And I love the predictive stuff. I love saying, when people want to move or something, and I said, look at this chunk of time that's coming up, next year, these couple of months, you're going to be really supported. So if you can wait till then, move then, or if you want to buy a house or sign contracts or, or if you're ready to start your own business, when's a good time to start a business? They use it for marriage compatibility too, and, all the fun stuff. But I love it. I love it so much.
What got you into that? Did you have any good times with that, getting for your chart? Was there something that was it went back to Dr. Laud. He's the first person to have read my chart years and years and years ago, right? And I found it really interesting, but like I said, I never thought I would really study it to practice. I just thought it was this cool kind of thing. And then I had another good friend read my chart maybe 15 years ago, and that was really helpful. So it was, I guess these experiences of just seeing how it was helpful in my life. And I think part of it was just another extension of I've been studying Ayurveda and some different some of the other Vedic sciences, right? Vastu, which is Vedic feng shui, which I love too, and they all have these pieces where it's yes, it's its own science, but they can really intermingle in a really cool way. Yeah.
And the ancient texts recommend everybody should know at least a little bit about each of these different sciences or philosophies, right?
Yeah.
So it's just I guess it was an expansion of what I was doing, and just that's where the karmic interest pulled me, right?
Yeah.
It's time to start doing charts.
And so you said it's a little different than the Western style. So for folks that maybe you're just kind of a little bit dipped in, they always think they read their horoscope in the newspaper, which is, I don't know, but the way that that Vedic astrology will kind of look at something in a similar way, is it sometimes in alignment, or is it just vastly different?
It's both, and what's really interesting is when I see people who have had their Western charts done, and I say, okay, give this a little space. Tell me what you think about this perspective. And, in some ways it's a different lens, right? So I don't necessarily, I love Vedic astrology, and I that's what I practice. I don't really know a ton about Western astrology, but I respect astrologers across the board, and I think everybody who's a good astrologer is going to be able to share something good. So, but the perspective I often give people from their Jyotish or their Vedic chart, most people say, wow, that's really cool, and that makes a lot more sense. So that's just my personal experience with it.
Yeah.
There's some different emphasis on, we look at the rising sign in somebody's chart as being a really fundamental piece or a really important part, more so than the sun sign, which is what most people, when you read the magazine and here's your monthly horoscope,
Which is
right?
what
I'm a Cancer, I'm a Leo, or whatever.
That's what
right?
you're born with. That's
Right.
that's your sign. And so the rising sign is what is that difference there?
That's the sign. So there's Aries, Taurus, Gemini, right? All the signs. What was on the on your cusp, right? When you were born, or what sign was on the horizon when you were born? So the Vedic system uses that as kind of a much more of a picture of who am I, or what are my mannerisms, or what does my physical body look like, or what is my mental capacity, right? We're always looking at the rising sign kind of as playing a bigger role than your sun sign.
So let's just throw an example out. If somebody has Leo as their rising sign. Oh,
I do.
yeah. Yeah. I think I do too. That's why I did it as an example. Do we both have
I just
Leo?
want to hear about me.
We both.
I don't remember your chart. It was so long ago. I looked at it.
Yeah. I think I'm a Leo rising.
Yeah. Welcome.
So we're both Leo risings. So talk about that.
Well, so this is interesting, right? So in Western astrology, I'm a Cancer sun. I was born in July, and I have Virgo rising in a Western chart. But so in the Vedic system, I'm a Leo rising. So in a sense, you would look at me more as a Leo than a Cancer. Again, it's one of those things where both perspectives have an interesting insight. I never really would identify with like a Leo rising as being, my kind of general, quick list of what I consider what Leo's like. But I see it very much now, I say, okay, that makes a lot of sense. I do, I run a business. I have two businesses really, right? And, doing some of this stuff with, YouTube and doing my own interviews and stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
There's a big piece that really shows forth in that, and I can see. And where my sun goes in my chart also says a lot. Actually, I've rooted that back to punk rock.
Interesting.
Yeah, very much.
Yeah.
Yeah, it goes into the 12th house, sitting there with Rahu, which is the north node of the moon. It's kind of a shadowy planet. So there's a big conflict with authority, emotionality. The 12th house has a lot to do with being kind of outside society. It's the house of also death and moksha, liberation, and things like that too, right? So it's a big placement for kind of having conflict with, the sun is the father, conflict with authority, in a sense. So, yeah.
What about, you talked about the Vedic feng shui.
Yeah.
Like, how would that vary? How would that be different from, I don't know if some folks are, so I'm aware of, very, very basic feng shui, right? Like, keep the bath.
Don't put sharks in front of your front door, right?
Don't put sharks. Don't put like mirrors up in the bedroom facing, different directions of sleeping.
Yep.
Put the toilet seat down when at night, or which I don't do. But but like, so what are there some similarities there again, or is there?
I haven't really studied feng shui in depth, so I know little bits and bobs of it too, But I know they use like a Bagua diagram, which is a slightly different diagram. Yeah, I've seen that before.
There's one hanging right over us right now.
So I don't know the system that well, to be honest with you, but
in the in the Veda system, what was it called? It's the
Vastu.
Vastu.
Is that what you're saying? Yeah.
Yeah, Vastu.
Mm-hmm.
What would be a good tip for somebody that wants to practice Vastu for their home? What's like the big thing they need to do?
Like a really simple thing? Well,
simple. Not
so the
big.
east
Simple.
direction is very big in Vastu. So you have your house right now, you have an east-facing entrance is spectacular. It's very good. The sun rules your overall health, well-being, your ability to kind of shine bright in the world, to be an authority in whatever field you're in, career-wise. All good stuff to have.
You hear that, people?
Yeah, you hear that? It's been confirmed.
Listen to me. I've been trying to tell you.
Right. Yeah. So you have
yeah.
a great entrance to your house.
Yeah.
I always look at the east side because it has so much to do with your health.
Interesting.
And your kind of social standing in the world and your ability to complete tasks and do things. So east facing entrance is very good. It's good to always keep an unobstructed walkway. You got a chair kind of right in
Well, that's
front of
not
it.
normally
That's not
there.
normally there?
No,
Okay,
just
good.
because we're doing
That's
this.
for right now.
That's usually like right here, so you can hang out right.
Perfect. Right.
Okay.
Yeah. So you
Wow,
want your
I'm
east.
off the hook there.
Right. Yeah, you want
That was
your
a
east
close
side to
one.
be very open so that sun rays come through it. You know, these you should open these
They are
blinds in the
usually
morning- in the
they are
morning.
usually open. It's
Look
just
at you,
'cause-
Bradford. That's why we listen to you. That's another reason we should be listening to you. You already know.
being torn apart. Okay, so yeah, but normally open blinds, let the light in.
Yep, very much. Very much.
In the east side, so it doesn't matter where the east side, whoever has their east side, that's what you want. So you'd even want maybe something if they don't have access to light where they live, maybe a light that would be on the east side that would shine.
You
Or
can
like-
do something, yeah, if there's not an east-facing window. I mean, I just did somebody's house actually a few weeks ago, right? And you can put something that's symbolic of the sun, right? So even a picture of a sunrise or, you know, out here in the desert, we have a lot of those little like sun kind of, I don't know,
Yeah.
not statues, but wall kind of plaque things, right?
Oh, yeah,
Putting one of
those.
those on the outside of your house on the east wall, very good way. And my last house I owned didn't have good window opens on the
Right.
east side. So I had a big sun on that wall to help open up that energy some more.
So maybe you get a huge mural of like the Teletubbies sun.
Something like that, yeah. I don't think the ancient Vedas wrote about the Teletubbies, but, you know, little did they know we were going to improve on the system 5,000 years later.
Yeah, with the
Little did they know.
Teletubby. Little did they know
Little
how
did they
advanced
know.
we'd go.
Yep.
With the Teletubbies.
They thought they had it figured out.
So
You have a horseshoe above your door. That's actually super auspicious, too. That's
Really?
great. Yeah,
oh, that's good.
very much. And it's facing up, even better.
And the dream catcher.
Dreamcatcher? That's great. Yeah,
That's
yeah,
good too.
Yeah,
And the
you know,
prayer
your front.
flags?
So relating it back to astrology, your front entrance is kind of like your first house. And for anybody
Okay.
who doesn't know astrology, your first house is kind of your microscopic image of who you are as a person, right? You can read your whole chart sort of through your first house.
Yeah.
So you really want that east entrance to be, you know, bright, clean, well lit, non-obstructed. You know, good paint on the door, good solid door, and things like that. Those are all good ways to improve your house vastu.
Cool.
Yeah.
That's really nice.
You could lay people's charts. You know, I'll take people's charts and lay that diagram over a house too, and you can look at it from that angle too.
Yeah.
You can go so deep. You know, you can start
Yeah.
really simple, and you can just keep.
And what was the word that we had earlier? Just so people don't do that. It's
What do we have?
with the where you're too focused on health, like
Oh, orthorexia.
right.
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
So
Don't do that.
Don't do that.
Don't do that.
Very balanced. Sun up. That's
Right.
good. That's
Yep.
fine.
That's good enough. You're good.
No, that's really interesting. So that's a really practical thing I think that folks could do,
Yep.
and be really nice. And from that you could expect once you do that everything is going to be perfect.
Pretty much, right? Right. No, part of it is like, yeah, you do these practices. Same thing with Ayurveda. You take in, you know, you see somebody who knows kind of has studied this stuff, and you try it out. Because ultimately, getting back to punk rock,
Yeah.
there is no authority but yourself, right?
Yeah.
So you see, say I made some changes to your front entrance. Give it
Yeah.
a few months, see what you notice. Do you feel healthier? Is your energy levels better? You know, if you get sick normally, are you less sick? Do you feel more vibrant about life, right?
Yeah.
You check it out, and if it's not quite right, you retweak it and try it slightly different, right? So,
Yeah.
you know, I have kind of a really, I guess this is coming from punk too, but a little bit of a decentralized authority kind of perspective on all of these arts and sciences. You know, like I think it's important that we, at the end of the day, we tap into ourselves. And there's actually one of the Vastu texts, like the ancient ones, it says if a person feels good in their I'm really butchering it. If a person feels good in their space, that space is an auspicious space, right? So there's all these rules that you can follow. They're all great. They all help. At the end of the day, it's like, how do you feel inside? Are you content? Are you happy?
Yeah.
Do you feel good about this, right?
Right. Yeah.
That's the ultimate truth, right?
And much like we were talking about being around somebody who is exuding that kind of, you know, that nice, good vibration. When you're in a space that feels good, you know that it's
Right.
it feels clean, it feels
Totally.
warm home, you know, cozy. It's like just feels like there's been good things happening here. You know, people are having fun. They're having really nice conversation.
That's how
maybe
I tell
prayer.
people, you know, when people, especially people are like, what is this about? Is it even real? And that, I think, again, I like these simple real life examples. Like, we've all walked into a space where you're like, ugh, I don't know what happened here, but something not good. Or, you know, like, I feel heavy and gross in here. Or you walk into a space that feels open, vibrant, alive. You know, that's that feeling that Vastu is tapping into and helping to create an environment that your sensory interactions with will bring you more of that feeling of contentment or happiness or clearness or whatever.
Right? I love it. And I love that. And even just like, I don't know, I'm it's a little off topic a little, but like the woman who does the Joy of Tiding, who I love that, Marie Kondo. And I was like, that's great. You know, you're keeping things tidy and like speaking to your stuff, you know, like, does this bring me joy? Or have I just not used this in years and it's just sitting around and, you know, kind of creating this like.
And you can look at that as chi or prana, which is kind of, you know, that's stagnant or stuck chi or stuck prana, right? Yeah. So things that just sit there, don't have any life to them, and you don't pay attention to them. Yeah. That just becomes a kind of a blob of stuckness, right? So you cleanse, right? You clean those things out. Prana is able to flow through your house or your office or whatever. Yeah. More freely. Yeah.
I think that's what I love in like the Miyazaki movies where everything's alive. Like the cartoons, Spirited Away and Howl's Moving Castle, like everything is animated, and you just get a sense that like those cultures really have that connection to everything, you know, the whole natural world and inanimate objects. Yep. Like there is a dialogue and there is a relationship to them. So I dig that. Cool. What could you give as like maybe like a forecast, if you will, for just with what you've been studying? Does that? Well, you know, obviously the big elephant in the room of what's like going on in the world right now. You know, there's some big placements that happened in like 2019 with the nodes of the moon. We don't have to get too into it, right? But Rahu, or the North Node, has a lot to do with like disease, famine, unforeseen events, kind of spontaneous surprise things, right? That kicked in right at the end of 2019, right? So in a big cycle that happens every, I think it's like 18 and a half years or so, right? You know, and this is kind of the dorky underside of it, but you know, you can look back and say, when's the last time that, you know, you always can look at cycles, and when the last time this happened, what happened then, right? So the before that was like 9/11 time, and then before that was like the AIDS crisis kind of really blew up. It was like 82, I think. Before that was the 60s, so that was JFK assassination, right? So all these strange things that are also kind of surrounded by mystery and unknown forces and a lot of questioning about what's happening, right? That's kind of the energy that Rahu brings, right? So that kicked in heavy in 2019, the end of 2019, right? Yeah. We kind of got out of the major part of that cycle. The other big thing that's been happening is Saturn and Jupiter have been sitting in Capricorn. This is sidereal. For those of you who know astrology, and maybe our Western astrologers might be like throwing up in your mouth a little bit right now, right? So there's some of the measurements are a little different, right? So in sidereal astrology, Capricorn and Jupiter have been, Saturn and Jupiter have been sitting in Capricorn. Jupiter's not happy in Capricorn, right? It's debilitated. It means it's just not a strong planet, or it's not happy in that spot. And so it's been sitting there too. Jupiter rules expansion, happiness, optimism, growth, good things, right? So when it's not happy, we just don't get those things, right? Saturn's the taskmaster, makes us work, causes us misery, delays, all that stuff. So Jupiter just finally has moved out of debilitation. Just last month, actually, or earlier this month, I mean. So that's been a very good sign. So what I see in astrologers that I trust see is that this period, there's some complications for another 2 or 3 weeks with Mars. We won't dig too deep into that, but there's still some potential for kind of flare-ups of even, Mars is about passion, even violence sometimes, aggression, so fiery things and fiery energy, right? So we got a few more weeks till we get out of that Mars piece of it. After that, through into the fall is a good period, really. Like once Jupiter is kind of back on our team again,
And I would say that to me points a lot towards, the pandemic. Keep kind of going the path it is. And we do, I know we have all these like, oh, there might be another flare, there might be this or that, right? There should be good stuff through the summer. It does go back into retrograde again in the fall, but it's only a small period. It's like it starts in September and into just November. So maybe another little chunk of kind of some more of what we've seen already. And then it moves back out again. And then things seem to be looking up more for next year.
Nice.
So, there's of course, like everything, there's mixed energy. There's good and bad, right? There's always that.
The polarity.
I'd say watch these next couple weeks. Stuff with guns, violence even, hopefully nothing terrible or horrible, but fires, earthquakes, anything that has to do is very Martian energy, war, stuff like that, It's not great. It's not in a great placement right now, but it's just a couple more weeks of that. Yeah. And then large in part, just putting a broad brush stroke, we should do good until the fall for that little retrograde period. And then we might see some setbacks, maybe some more, lockdown type kind of things happening or something like that. And then into the next year, hopefully, all goes well.
All smooth sailing, roaring 20s.
Roaring 20s
or boring 20s.
Or one or the other is going to happen, right? So that's my mini forecast for the rest of this year.
That's great. And so just one more thing here with like Mercury retrograde. That's something I think I'm trying to think what people are familiar with.
That's about it, right?
How does that translate in Vedic astrology?
It serves a very kind of similar meaning. Mercury is involved in communications, electronics, commerce, interactions, things like that. So when a planet goes retrograde, it essentially just means it's acting kind of funky, right? So when you look up in the sky and see a planet, it appears as if it's going backwards. It's not, obviously. It's just the angle we're seeing it from the Earth. But the way it's interpreted is that's a period where whatever is relative to that specific planet, the qualities of that planet are just going to get a little bit funky. It doesn't always mean bad. It just means a little bit messy. And Mercury is already kind of a fast planet, involves speed, and it's very Vata, or air element energy.
Yeah.
The big thing, everybody's like, want your computers, want your, electronics go crazy. And I think there is a piece of that,
like nerd
right?
saying, nerd warning.
Right, totally. That's where you roll your eyes, right?
Computer, your phone's going to blow up.
Right. But, to be honest, I don't give it a whole ton of heed. I don't change my life around it. I don't recommend people do either, Mm-hmm. A lot of stuff with astrology I think is also really great to use. It's just a practice of mindfulness. I've really begun to think of astrology in that way. So you look at kind of where placements are or where planets are going, transits, and you say, oh, let's be more mindful around that area of my life, right? Mm-hmm. It's almost a practice in and of itself.
I'd like that you said that as a practice because it can be like a scapegoat. I think people can use it like, it's Mercury retrograde, and I'm off the hook, and or
that's
whatever.
Such a lazy way.
Like that.
It's such a lazy way to use it.
And then you're just in this place where you can be mindful of, okay, this thing is happening. I will pay special attention without being neurotic to this aspect of my life that could need tending to. My relationship with my family, my the work, like what's really serving me in my highest way right now. I like that. Like I can really kind of follow that path to use it to I don't know, I'm always thinking like what's going to make me a better person, a more loving and caring person, and if that's bringing me towards that that outcome,
right?
Like in using that. So I really like that, just like kind of that could be a mindfulness practice and a way to utilize it. Yeah.
Totally. And that's what, I really enjoy even just putting out general kind of forecast stuff,
Yes.
It's really obviously best to have your chart interpreted because the planets all sit in different areas of our life in our chart too. So how, a Mercury retrograde is going to affect you is going to be slightly different than how it'll affect me and vice versa, right?
Yeah.
So, that's always the best. But there's these like general themes, and I really love that idea of, and again, it's a practice for me to do where I go, oh, I'm telling people to be mindful of their, this. Yeah, maybe I should try that too.
Yeah, I'll try it out as well.
It's kind of like that heal yourself kind of thing, right? Like, you got to also do the work yourself, and it's a good kick in the ass sometimes for me, to be more mindful or whatever, right?
I learned quite a bit from my the clients that I work with is what I'm offering them to try. It's a reminder it's just, oh yeah, that does work, and
Right.
I can follow that as well, and it can be really helpful. It's
Yeah.
like just kind of forget that sometimes when we're in these roles. And so yeah, right. And I'm going to link to your YouTube. You have a lot of great videos you've been doing just for these forecasts and self-help routines and things, and just like little nuggets that are great to be able to kind of sprinkle through and be like, oh great, this is something I can do for tending to my body if I'm like wearing my mask too much, or got like shoulder pain,
Yep.
stuff like that. So
Yeah, I do like. I'm a little bit of like a chronic student, and so yeah, there's some Ayurvedic stuff in there, Ayurvedic food practices or lifestyle stuff. I do Vedic astrology, of course, some Vastu stuff, some just silly stuff too, a little bit too,
student-holic.
something like that.
Yeah, but it's great. I mean, you're pursuing knowledge. Keep going in that direction. I want to ask a couple questions I do at the end of the shows here for you, which is it's a pivot. We're pivoting.
Okay.
What was your favorite toy growing up?
Ooh. Toy. The first thing that really comes to my mind isn't really a toy, but I grew up on the edge of the desert, so I was always building forts.
Ah,
I have a weird fascination. This is a funny thing too. Another weird pivot. I have a fascination with like I love war history. I've always I love war movies. I thought I was going to be in the Air Force when I was a kid.
Wow.
And there's good stuff in my chart about and I really truly think I was like a revolutionary in my past life. I have this,
Yeah.
I think I've told you, I have this big connection to the Spanish Civil War.
Yes.
Like I feel this, like I was there and like it's not over yet. I'm going back,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
Franco and the fascists will go down, like it feels very visceral,
Yeah.
It's very funny because I'm a big hippie really, but
right.
anyway,
Peace punk. I always say peace
I
punk.
was a peace punk.
because I feel
I was. So anyway, building forts and kind of playing war stuff.
Yeah.
Was like my thing. I loved it. I loved
Wow.
it so much.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Like just lean-tos and like just things out and
Yeah, go find, like those. I remember we used to go find those political signs, those really big ones, that were like, I don't know, 5 feet across, and build walls at those and drag bricks out into the desert to like
Whoa.
stabilize and,
That's
all
awesome.
kinds of stuff. Yeah.
That's super
I loved
smart.
forts. I loved playing forts and
Yeah.
building communication systems with pipes and,
Yeah.
I mean, it was intricate, to
that's
say the
really
least.
that's rad.
We didn't do training drills or any,
Yeah, none of that, but just fun fare.
should have thought of that though.
And then what? I'm gonna add another question because I have 2, but I want to start trying to do this third question. So the second one is, what's your favorite movie?
I always come back to, I don't know if this is totally accurate, but it might be Back to the Future series. I mean, I could watch that
Dude.
forever, and I will watch it forever.
Yeah,
Because
yes,
they're all 3 of them are great in their own way. And like,
Yeah.
I remember being a kid when you watched the second one about the future, and you're like,
yes,
how amazing is the future going to be? And then, there's the Wild West, and you're like,
Yeah.
God, how cool would that have been back there?
I
I love that series.
when the second, I totally agree. The first Back to the Future might be up in my top 3, like of all time. It's like the perfect one of the perfect movies. Like it hits literally every
All the feelings.
Everything. And but when the second one came out with the hoverboard, I remember like I remember calling Toys R Us and being like, when is the hoverboard there? Do you have it? And the woman being like, let me go check. And I was like, oh my God, they're not in yet. They're coming. And she came back. She's like, we don't have that in yet. I was like, oh,
Not yet.
but it's coming.
It's on its way. It's on the truck. Huh?
It's on the way. It's like you just didn't get a shipment in. Okay.
Right.
And I called back a few times, and then finally it was like somebody I think was wise enough, like this movie's out, and they're like, that's just the movie. That was just a prop. Like that's
Right.
not real.
Right.
I was like, but it says Mattel. Anyway, that's maybe someday.
This is another tangent on that stream, but did you see, this is, I don't know, a couple years ago now, maybe 3 or 4, but they had Michael J. Fox. Nike made him, the shoes
Yes.
from the second one.
Oh, yeah, I did
And they made
yeah.
like a special pair for him.
Yes, I did
Yeah.
see that. That's
was
great.
great.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I also remember and this is another little one, but on this Back to the Future 2, I remember we had a party that day on 2015, and we all watched.
I remember that day.
No, it wasn't November 5th. It was a different date, but it was 2015. So it was like 30 years later.
Yep.
Yeah, you remember that.
Good day, right?
It was a good day.
Auspicious
It was a good day.
day.
To go to the future. Auspicious. Martin McFly's Vedic Astrology chart.
Yes,
We need to read that. That would be all over the place. Like, dude, you got a weird one here. Third question, which you'll be the first I'm throwing this in to a guest on, is favorite album.
Oh, wow. That's really hard, Bradford.
I know. And it's
You only
probably,
got one,
I think
huh?
you get like a top 10 is good, or top 3 even, but it's tricky. I mean, so this could be just think of it like, I know it could be a changing thing, but even just like right now, what's the one that maybe had like, yeah. Okay, so I just had to pause because this is a hard question. We needed some time. And I was telling you, like, I was able to kind of get like a top 10 a couple years ago that I felt good about, but this is a tough one. So you said you had a couple maybe that are like kind of up there.
Yeah, well, it's like there's ones that are different parts of your life,
Yes, exactly.
life changing, and there's
Right.
ones that are kind of like emotions, like depending on what you're going through, But I mean, it's funny to say because it's not something I listen to all the time. But one album that I do come back to over the years is a Crass album, "Feeding of the 5,000."
Yes.
They were such a pivotal band for me. I mean, just
Yeah.
one of those mind-opening bands and I still, just for fun, will put that on and just like kind of like rock out and get really angry and and
Yeah.
have fun with that. But that album, it's about so much more than just that album, for me.
Yes.
But that album's huge. Another one that jumps out at me is Bruce Springsteen, "Nebraska."
Oh, yeah.
Is a freaking-tastic album, and
Yes.
I listen to that one when I drive up to Vegas a lot to see my family.
Yeah.
And there's this really specific mood that when I hit Phoenix on the way home from Phoenix to Tucson, and it's late at night usually.
Yeah.
It's like 10 p.m. and I just put on Nebraska, and that's like my get me home album.
Yeah.
Because that's such a good like travel out. I mean,
Yeah.
it just makes you want to drive and open expanses forever.
It's so intimate and open. Like,
Yeah.
he's right there with you. I mean, it's all acoustic, right? I mean, there's some a little bit of
Yeah,
little
no,
stuff.
there's like a little electric, but it's so low key.
super
I mean,
low
it's-
key.
might
He
as
did it
well.
on a 4-track,
Yeah,
the Porta
yeah.
studio, I think, and like he's so.
I think he did it in I think he did it in a hotel room in Nebraska. And he sent it to the band and was like, "Hey, I got some ideas," And they're
Yeah.
like, "Dude, put this out. This
yeah,
is brilliant."
that's done.
Right.
You don't need us on that one.
Right.
It's a good answer. Good one.
Yeah.
really
they're
good.
pretty divergent, I guess, kind of
Yeah.
themes and stuff. But those are both huge for me. I mean, like, yeah, there's so much mood. I mean, I can still, I don't listen to punk rock every day, of course,
Yeah.
but like, when I'm in the mood, I need some Bad Brains that,
Yes.
they've stood the test of time for me. I mean,
Yeah.
still to me, just phenomenal band.
Oh yeah,
And that emotion still feels so raw and good. And,
it's amazing.
most of my music these days is much more mellow and,
Yeah.
budgeons and chanting or, atmospheric stuff, but
Schumann resonance of the earth, like just listening to frequencies like
totally.
that.
I do.
Yeah, I do
actually.
too. Me too. I mean, I'm guilty as charged
Right.
again. But the Nebraska album, as my friend John Balzerini, who I've had on the show, he would say, "The only boss you ever need."
Right.
Like, that's
I love
true.
that. I love
It's
that
true.
saying.
I love it. Anything else that you wanted to kind of like throw out there just before we?
I think that's great, Bradford.
Yeah.
I know I said it to you like off this, but I love that you're doing this so much. I think
Thanks.
this is such a good thing for you, and I think you're awesome at it.
Thanks.
And I'm super excited to hear the other
Yeah.
podcasts too. I think it's so cool.
Thanks, man. Thanks, Josh.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and we'll have links to everything where they can find you, YouTube, and your practice, and anything else. Like, I mean,
Cool. Yeah. I
social
mean,
media and
most
stuff.
the nice thing again, of course, with technology, I see a lot of people kind of through Zoom consults. I do a lot of Vedic astrology and Ayurvedic stuff over Zoom, so I can book consults online. So I can see people kind of from anywhere. Yeah, I have my acupuncture practice here in town too.
Yeah.
Haven't figured out how to poke needles through the Wi-Fi
Not
internet
yet.
yet, but maybe
Just
someday we'll see.
Tell people a little to the left.
Right.
There. Okay, now do it. Yeah, right there.
Poke.
Like that. Go on. now.
But yeah, I'm Rupa Ayurveda is my rupaayurveda.com. I got all the
That's it.
socials. I got Instagram and
Yeah.
Facebook and YouTube and all that too.
So check out all the links there. And dude, great seeing you. I'm so happy
you too,
you're here.
you too, man. This
Yeah.
is fun. Thank you.
Be well. Well, hot diggity dogs. Diggity, diggity, diggity dogs. That was fun and really great hanging out. You know, after the show ended, we were just remarking how nice it is to hang out in person, outside. Beautiful day, amazing. A little windy, so you hear some of that through the show, but hey, I can't control that. That is not my problem. And you also heard some stuff maybe in the distance. There's a big dumpster that got put outside our house, so people were dumping things in there. Again, that's not my problem either. But what my problem is creating a wonderful, beautiful experience for your ears, and which then will send signals to your heart saying, that felt nice to hear. I like that. And I actually felt really inspired through the show. I don't know how you feel about this. I feel really inspired when I'm with other people and feed off the energy. And so it was really great being with Josh here and just kind of going off of, you know, us riffing back and forth and sprinkling in our wonderful 80s and 90s pop culture references to some really interesting material and fun. Daddy did not take the T-Bird away because we're in a good zone. I wonder if I'm repeating things. I think I said this before, so I'm even repeating the fact that I might be repeating material that I've done on these intros and outros, but I just don't know. I also was just about, while I was saying that, I was just about to start like auto speaking as if I was sending a text. That feels a little scary to me. I just almost like wanted to say exclamation point after I just did that last sentence. Wow. Okay. That's interesting. That seems like a wake-up call. That's a wake-up text. Okay. Well, I had a really good time here. I'm kind of just still coming off of this really fun experience of finishing up a short series that I've been in, and that was a lot of fun. And there'll be more. I'll be talking about that more in the upcoming episodes. I'm really excited about it. It was a great experience. And just give you a little teaser. Lucid Films is it's the Instagram right now for it. So there's a lot of stuff kind of that will be revealed soon about the project. But I'll just keep that for now, Lucid Films. And all the show notes, I got all of Josh's stuff on there. Check him out. Really great. Spending some time with him. He's got some wonderful offerings. Please check out his stuff on YouTube. And then, you know, if you want to book a session, he's really, really skilled, quite a skilled practitioner. And what else? Oh, if you would like to add a little something to my Patreon piggy bank, that would be much welcomed. I will never not say no to that. Yeah, one negative, positive, negative. Yeah, okay. Well, that's about all from my end. I hope you're keeping it wonderful and joyous in your hearts and minds, and I will see you on the flip-flop. All right, my friends. Bye.
May all your wishes come true. All my friends till the very end. Thank you for the fun and the play. Till next time, I hope you all can find. Live to see another day. Live to see another day. Live to see another. Live to see another. Live to see another.